Hey guys, how's it going? I'm just gonna wait for a couple of people to show up here, but I hope this is gonna be a fun little video. Get to share a bit of history, some fond memories, perhaps. I would like to begin by asking you guys, first of all, how you making out with the restrictions on travel and get-togethers and all that kind of stuff? And have they closed anything weird near you? Maybe somebody can explain this to me, but they haven't done it right, just local to me yet. But the neighboring counties have closed hiking trails and parks. Not, I get closing kids' play parks, but closing hiking trails seems a little odd to me. Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks for checking it out. Anyway, I don't get it. It seems like going out in the woods would be a great way to socially distance, but apparently that's not the way it goes. Anyway, just hope everyone's doing really well and staying safe and observing all of the good safety protocols to make sure that we're not transmitting this virus. Now, since we're all stuck at home, let's have a fun little chat here about knives. So, listen, I'd love to know two things from you guys who are watching. How long have you been doing this? I'm sure some of you have been around way longer than me. Um, and the other thing, okay, parks are open, restaurants are closed. Yeah, and the restaurants here are closed as well, except for takeout. Most of them have developed some kind of takeout method. The other thing they've done, which is odd, and I know I'm totally derailed now, but restaurants can serve alcohol. So like if you're ordering a pizza, let's say, you could have the pizza show up with, a couple of beers or a bottle of wine or something like that, which is interesting. Golf here is closed. Yeah, I that's that's a perfect example, Colby. I feel like when are you ever closer than 6 feet on a golf course? Hey, thanks for joining. We're just talking a little bit about stuff that's been closed that seems random. Anyway, we should move on with the rest of the discussion, but I'd really like to know, yeah, how long has everybody been doing this? How long have you been into it? And, just looking back on my old videos brought back a lot of memories. So that kind of got me thinking along those lines. The other big question I have for you, I'd love to hear it down below. And I think I'm going to actually go ahead and comment with this. And later on down the road, I'll write up everything and, I mean, I'll count up everything and see what knives sort of get the most attention. I'll throw up a post on Instagram as well with the hashtag first knife or something like that. So yeah, let me know down in the comments or even right here in the live stream, what was the knife that kind of got you going, that really started things off for you? And for me, I actually have to mention, a person before I ever got into knives. I'll leave this one out because this really was the first knife that I researched and spent a lot of time on and figured out and then bought. And I bought and carried this knife for a few years before I ever started the channel. But my dad was a big knife guy. He taught me just the value of having a sharp knife on your person all the time. He taught me how to sharpen a knife and what expectations I should have. He was the first sort of sharpening snob that I ever knew. He would not be satisfied with it unless it was really hair popping sharp. And that was the first time I'd seen that. I'd seen people sharpen knives before, but I'd never seen anyone put real care and time and attention into it. Let's see, first was a Browning. Cool. But yeah, so my dad really was the first one to kind of teach me a love of knives and to take have some self-respect in your approach to knives. He had, as I say, I mentioned this before, had some nice knives, CRKT M16. I'll bet you the M16 was a lot of people's first knife. By the way, guys, I got a cup of coffee here, so if I go silent for a second, I'm just taking a sip. I'm warning you because I'm about to do that right now. Um, so my dad honestly deserves a lot of credit for why I ended up being into knives, and I'd be curious to know if other people had that experience as well. So moving on from that, I got to tell you this one funny story. My dad had a Charade Bruin that he'd gotten on a trip to the States. And I haven't seen too many like it. I don't know if it was like a limited run or something. But anyway, this little Charade Bruin was green, sort of had green, either FRN or G10 or something. And he dropped it in an ice fishing hole when we were ice fishing. And from that point on, he loved the knife so much that our ice trip our ice fishing was over for the day. The rest of the time we spent with a magnet trying to reach down the ice fishing hole and get the stupid thing off the bottom of the lake. Luckily, we were only fishing in 8 or 10 feet of water. But anyway, what a fiasco that was. But that kind of tells you how much he really appreciated knives. And I don't think I own a knife that I would go through that for. And this was a fairly budget-friendly charade. So let's get back to the first thing I have to say is before I ever had this channel, before I ever knew anything. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for coming to joining. Kerouac was a 96 Endura, cool. Yeah, from 15 from 150 to 1500 pretty quickly. Yeah, it can go crazy, can't it? So the first knife that I actually researched and tried to figure out what I wanted, I watched a bunch of videos. This was the knife that introduced me to the world of YouTube knife videos. This Ontario Rat Model 1, this is an Aussie. This was the one that I actually bought, like this very knife. I carried this constantly for about 3 years. And like, I just, I wasn't planning to have my own YouTube channel. It was nothing like that. I just watched probably Nut and Fancy and Cutlery Lover and a few others. But watched their reviews, did research, kind of took notes stuff. I got really serious about it. 8015 started me. Oh, cool. So I ended up getting this knife. By the way, I haven't even said this yet, and we're 6 minutes in. I guess it's because I was waiting for people to show up. But the inspiration for this video and this discussion, Code 4. Yes, thank you. That's the next thing I'm about to bring up is the Cold Steel Code 4. But before I bring that up, I got to give some credit where credit is due. This video I from Patty's Potato Peelers. He did made the video an open tag, and I want to say, I could be completely wrong. Maybe I'm missing this totally, but I think Brian Slicey Dicey did a similar video as well. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize, Brian. I must be misremembering, but I know you did a recent video that was a tag from Patty's Potato Peelers. Anyway, so this was the first knife that got me kind of interested in knives, got me watching Nut and Fancy videos and Cutlery Lover videos and a few others. And from here, Crockett 20 was another one back then, and he's still around. Who else did I used to watch a lot of? Anyway, Last Boy Scout. Last Boy Scout. So I watched a lot of reviews from those guys, ended up buying this knife and carried it. And I wasn't planning to have any more knives. I wasn't planning to collect knives, have a YouTube channel or anything like that. It was just this, I wanted a good knife, and this one seemed to really fit what I was looking for. So that was the very first knife. Now, the next knife was the Cold Steel Code 4. And that knife is the one that deserves credit for, I actually went back and looked. It was the very first review that I put on, yep, Nut and Fancy and Jim Skelton. I know. We need to do another review. We need to do another video like this where we talk about old YouTube channels that we used to watch. There's a few of them that I used to really like that are totally gone. So if you can think of any, put them in the comments, and we'll do a follow-up video. It won't be live or anything, but we can have a discussion about that. So I don't have the Code 4, but I've got a Recon 1 here. So Almar Fang and Gerber Guardian, nice. Benchmadeaholic. So after I had the Rat 1, I was watching different things, and I heard about the Cold Steel Code 4. I think it was new. It had just come out. Nut and Fancy was really, really stoked about it. I watched a few more. It just felt like the Cold Steel Code 4 would be like the perfect knife for me. It'd be thin, easy to carry, not too big, not too small. Just, in my mind, I had built it up to such a level. And I don't know, do you guys do this as well? But I was like thinking this would be my dream knife. Now, there were a couple of others that I was interested in, but at the time, the Code 4 was new, which is why I was so interested in it. Nick Shabazz. Thinking, well, who is this fool? When Nick started, he I kind of wondered about him as well, and refined his craft so well and so quickly that he deserves a lot of credit. Nick's done a great job. Um, Anyway, Code 4 was the very first review that I put online, and I went back and watched some of it, and I couldn't even stand it. I was like, this is terrible. And I don't have a Code 4, and there's actually a bit of a story to that. Code 4, because it was my first review, I need to get another one. But what happened was, as they made upgrades to CTS XHP and from the OS 8 and then now to S35VN. I really hope I can get an XHP one sometime. But what happened was this. I sold one because I wanted a different blade shape, bought the one with the different blade shape. I had a Tanto on the way to me. This was, a couple of years ago now. And it said, as we all do, it said delivered. So I went home super excited to go pick up the new version of the Code 4 that I had, got to my house, and um, the mailbox was empty. So I was like, well, that's weird. And so I called the post office. Actually, I live in a small town, so I know the postal workers. I talked to them. I said, hey, is it possible that my mail hasn't come yet? It just says delivered. They said, yeah, it's possible. A lot of times, the drivers will mark a bunch of packages delivered before they go down that road type of thing. And so I waited and waited, and it never came, and it never came. And that knife just vanished into thin air. Don't know what happened to it. It's the only time I've ever had a bad experience with the Postal Service. And because of that story right there, I still don't have a Code 4. I don't know if it was stolen. I do live on a highway, and my mailbox is right by the road. And I genuinely suspect that someone who knew I was into knives, who knew that I got decent, nice packages so every so often, just saw that package being delivered and opened my mailbox and took it. That's the only explanation, because I talked to, the next day or so, I talked to the person who delivers the mail. She's a great lady. I know her. She's like, nope, I specifically remember putting it in your mailbox. I have no idea where it could have gone. Ultimately, we filed a claim, and I did get the money back for the knife, but the knife was just gone. So kind of a sad story. Anyway, that's my Code 4 story. That's why I don't have one. I will say that this, guys, especially as I think back and in preparation for this video, I'm going to get another one. I really am, because it's the very first knife that I ever put on YouTube. I feel like I should have at least a version of it. So now we've covered the Cold Steel Code 4. We've covered the Rat Model 1. We're not actually best for prepping food. You know what? I would probably lean toward the American Lawman. This wouldn't be bad. The Code 4 wouldn't be bad. Like cold steel does purposely emphasize making really good cutting tools. All right. Hey, Brian, what's going on, buddy? Thanks for checking in. Glad you're here. Just told my sad story about why I don't have a Code 4. So back to the knives. The next knife, guys, is going to be a little bit different. Some of you who were there at the beginning may remember some of these, but for a time I had a mild obsession with these Charade 300 series frame locks. They're these massive. Did I have two? Yeah, I did. They're these massive, kind of insane charades that, these massive charades that were just appealing to me back then. Like, they have this weird industrial look. They were really thick and heavy, and they're really affordable. Like, they were super cheap at the time. And so I ended up getting like the whole series of these. There were like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different versions. It would be like the SCH 30 whatever, 307, 308, 302. You can see here some of them there now. And they do have kind of a cool look. They're ATR 13 MOV steel. They're insanely heavy for their size, but they're still not bad knives. Most of them I've given away, or I've used them and abused them to such an extent that they're not really much use anymore. But they were pretty cool knives. And when I was at the beginning, I think most of us probably focus on budget knives. Yeah, I mean, and you know what, guys? I should throw these on Instagram once in a while. By the way, now there's a few more people here. I really want to start this hashtag. I'm going to put a picture of this knife up with the hashtag first knife, and so if anyone feels so inclined to join me in that hashtag, I'd welcome you doing that. Let's kind of make it a thing on Instagram. So these knives I got a bunch of in the early days, and I really like them. And I think the reason I kind of connected with Charade is one of my first knives was a Charade. I already told the story about my dad's Charade Bruin from when I was a kid. So the 300 series were often featured on my early videos. Next, let's move on to a knife that was in my heart and mind and soul before I ever owned it. Okay. And that is the Cold Steel Recon 1. It's still one of my favorite knives. Um, you know, there are all these knives out there. And yeah, sometimes listen, Carrie, I'm going to actually do a video on the knives that I miss the most. And when I'm done talking here, I'm going to finish this video with sort of my most memorable knives, the knives that stick out to me in mind, where I still have just this connection to that particular knife. But the Recon One, guys, holds a special place in my heart. I've told this story lots and lots of times, so I'm going to tell it really quickly. I used to watch Deadliest Warrior, where they did the comparison between the two different, either two different branches of the military or two different secret services or whatever. And they had one where the Navy SEALs were featured, and they said that the knife that the Navy SEALs carried was the Cold Steel Code 4. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time speaking English right now. Um, so I was like, no way, Cold Steel has this Recon One, and I think I just called it the Code 4, but the Recon One is what Navy SEALs carry. And look, this is how naive I was at the time. I was like, no way, that's what the Navy SEALs carry. That must be the greatest knife ever. And I just thought this is the coolest thing, and I've got to find one. And so I started looking around, and of course, pretty quickly I found reviews from Fancy, and I found reviews from Cutlery Lover and lots of guys that were the big YouTube channels back then. And so I started watching all these reviews, and that just got me more stoked for it. And so eventually, way back early in the channel, I was able to pick one up. It was back in the days when they were in Aussate steel with the black coating. Kind of looked really dumb. Ultimately, I ended up stripping the coating off that, and I actually sold it to a friend who still has it. I should have tracked him down and got that knife, but we can't really, we're social distancing. So, um, anyway, as the new iterations of the Recon One have come along, I've kind of kept up with them. This is the Warriors and Wonders / Blades Canada exclusive version of the Recon One. Pretty cool knife, and S35VN, when I got this, they were still in CTSX HP, and S35VN was like a limited run or something. Hold on, I just need a sip of coffee. Now all the Cold Steel stuff is done in S35VN, which reminds me, as I said, I need to add a Code 4 back to the collection. And like Brian needs a Recon 1. So, Brian, I highly recommend the Warriors and Wonders exclusive, especially for those of you who are watching from the States, which I know is going to be most of you. Your dollar is so strong right now that I think these go for like $140 Canadian, which is probably like $55 US at this point. So you can probably get one. I don't know how many they have left, but I know it was an exclusive. Yeah, and their S35 is very good. You know what? Honestly, guys, Cold Steel. I'm sure, I'm surprised I don't get more accusations of just being a hardcore fanboy, because I, I love Cold Steel. I really do. They do a great job with heat treat. They do so many things right. Their blades always cut. The only Cold Steel I've ever had where I could even question the slicing ability was the SR1, which is meant to be just a tank. Yeah, and the Voyager series are all fantastic knives. They have tons of them. It's just, anyway, we could go on and on about nothing but Cold Steel. Maybe I'll have to do that in another video. But let's get back to the other knife that I wanted to talk with you guys about before I share some sort of fond memories. Last but certainly not least is the paramilitary 2. And listen, you guys watching, tell me if you remember this. When I first got into knives, and when I bought, no, here's a good example. So I ended up buying, I had a Recon 1, I had a Mannix 2XL, I just made Contigo. I had a bunch of stuff before I ever got a pair of 2 because they were so hard to get. I can remember going, like, um, signing up for everybody's email list. Like, I'd sign up for Blade HQ and Knife Center and everybody's list trying to get a pair of 2. And you would get the email from Blade HQ and go online to buy it, and it would already be sold out. And you're there like, what the heck? Did they only get 2 in stock or something? These were so hard to get. And I wanted one so bad I could almost taste it, guys. And I'm sure many of you can identify with that. Uh, this would be, I don't know what, 2015, maybe before that. Um, so couldn't get a pair of 2 anywhere. Finally, I got an email. I was on a mailing list from AG Russell. I got an email from AG Russell saying they had some in stock. The ones they had were the Digicam with the black blade, and I bought it, and I was so stoked. And honestly, guys, this knife was, yeah, Lynn Thompson is my hero. Uh, no problems shipping knives out of Canada. No, then it's your border who's looking at the knife, Brian, and they don't care. You guys could have like whatever you want. I'm pretty sure you could order a bazooka and it would just get mailed to your house. In Canada, they don't trust us. Um, so here I am, like, honestly, this knife, I don't know how I could convey the emotion that was associated with the Para 2 for me. It truly was a grail knife for me. I was so excited. I couldn't hardly, one of those times where you're like checking the mail every day. You're like, you have it coming and you just can't hardly stand it. That was my Para 2 experience, and I loved it. The knife came, I was in love with it. I enjoyed it. It was, as I said, the Digicam Black Blade. I actually got a little obsessed, and I ended up like going after, by this around that time or shortly after that, I learned about blade forums and started spending time on blade forums and bought a lot of knives through blade forums. So many, it's ridiculous. If you go over there and find me, you'll find I have a pretty high record because they have so many, because I've done so many transactions. Yeah, Andrew Demko is my favorite definitely my favorite, custom knife maker for sure. Anyway, long story short, I ended up buying a bunch of sprint runs of the Para 2. I had like 5 or 6 or 7, and this is the one that I ended up keeping. This, of course, is the S35VN, and it's sort of stuck around. I still may do this. I've actually considered, either I may keep it or sell it. I don't know, but just get the S110V version of the Para 2. I love watching Pete over at Cedric and Ada, and Pete just loves S110V. He ranted and raved about it in a recent video, and he's got me thinking that I should get an S110V para. So I probably will be doing that. And then I don't know. I probably don't need 2, so I don't know if I probably won't keep this one. I'll sell it or trade it or whatever, and make my primary para the S110V. The other thing I'd kind of like to do is do the blades we love, scales and stuff for the Para 2. They've got some really, really cool stuff, and I want to do that. So now, after we've talked about all that stuff, oh, you know what I didn't talk about was this knife right here, Spyderco Mannix. The reason I have this one is because one of the first knives that I got, or around the time that I was getting knives early on, honorable mention has to go to the Mannix 2XL. I had a Mannix 2XL for a long time, and I liked it. I still think it's one of the best Spydercos out there. There you go. A couple of, if you guys, yeah, I guess you guys can all see the comment, so I don't need to mention it. But yeah, the CTS XHP is my favorite steel. Great steel, and I'd love to. And so it was just being mentioned there that the AK-47 is still available in that steel. And yeah, there's, guys, I don't want to come off like a steel snob. There's tons of great steels, and BD1, yeah, Voyager in CTS BD1, great knife. Okay, let's get back to the next thing that I wanted to share with you guys. And I would love guys to hear your comments down below. And hopefully this video doesn't just like it's not so much just about sharing my knives, but I'm hoping that no, I don't have my Sebenza anymore. I got rid of it in favor of a gun that I was looking for. However, a Sebenza will be coming shortly. In fact, yeah. Anyway, you'll see a Sebenza shortly. That's one of those knives that I'll always have in the collection. I just traded it, or I just got rid of it for a short time, and another one is inbound right now. So I want to get into something else that really, when I was watching Patty's Potato Peelers videos, I really thought back about some of the knives that really stood out to me and just, connected. The Espada. Okay, so sounds like maybe he's suggesting the Espada is still available in CTSX HP. So, the next thing that I want to share with you guys before we wrap this up, and we've been in 25 minutes, so we'll probably stop here shortly. But as I looked back at some of my early, yeah, and the Talwar, Talwar is such a great knife. I think the Talwar has got to be one of the most underrated knives out there. So, as I was looking back in my channel to create this video, I looked at a lot of knives, and actually I could just remember some of them just so easily. But there are a few knives that have gone through my hands that just, I still remember how exciting they were and how cool they are. And they're all knives that I still like. So let me give you quickly that list. And of course, the one at the top of the list is going to be, or the two early knives like this were the Para 2 and the Recon 1. And the Para 2 to a greater extent because they were so insanely popular back then and they were really hard to find when I got my first one. But other knives that gave me that similar feeling of just excitement and like, that moment where you actually think, I can't believe this knife that I've thought about and looked at and heard about so often, I actually own. All right. That kind of feeling some of these knives generated in me. The first one was the 0392. I got it from a guy named Naderade on Blade Forums. He's also a member of Canadian Knife and Gear. So if anybody watching is on Canadian Knife and Gear, Nader is a great guy, and I've been making knife deals with him since before there even was a Canadian Knife and Gear. But the 0392, he had when he had it up for sale. I think he had two or three, and he wanted to get rid of one. And I like went on this mad selling spree, getting rid of all these knives so that I could afford to buy. Nader's 0392. It was the plain tie with blue hardware, and I loved that thing. And I was so stoked about it. Yes, he does have a great collection. And so I owned it. The reason I ultimately got rid of it is I just didn't feel like I could use it. Like because I knew it was a limited run. I don't know. It got to my head and I just couldn't use it. So the 0393, the more recent production ZT, that's a great knife. I love it just about as much. But of course, the nice thing is, by the way, Brian, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but you did a great job modifying yours with that awesome carbon fiber. If I didn't say that, I should have. I've been drooling over that thing a little bit. Anyway, so 0392, another zero tolerance. I've got a few zero tolerances on this list. When I got my first 0560, I thought I had reached like the pinnacle of knife ownership. I really did. The 0560 was so exciting to me, and I looked high and low, and I when I got that knife, I was like, yep, I'm done collecting knives. Forget it. It's all over. There's nothing better than this in the world. And I carried it and used it, and it's a great knife. I still look back and, it's still a great knife. I have nothing bad to say about it. But that was definitely on my short list of knives that really made an impression. The Microtech DOC, the blue DOC that I had, and that was another one so hard to find. All Microtechs are like that because they do these very small runs. And So I wanted a DOC. I wanted to make sure it was the second gen when they after they fixed the clip. You guys remember back when we were all watching Jim Skelton videos and he had the FU clip on the DOC. Um, and so I was looking for one, and on the secondary market, you had to be careful that it wasn't the original version. So I finally got a blue Microtech DOC, and again, same feeling. I just loved that knife. I remember going to the post office to get it, and I couldn't even go home. Like I had to open it up and get it out of the package and check it out, like right while I was sitting in the car in front of the post office. Next on the list, two classics that you would really expect that you'd probably expect: the Sebenza 25 and the XM18. The first time I got the Sebenza 25, got it from a guy here in Canada who I still sometimes talk to and have made other knife deals with. Um, I think I might have actually sold it back to him. Yeah, Kaiser Milner is fantastic. It's really good. I would argue the Kesmic is the most underrated Kaiser. I just love that knife. Um, so back to my my list: Sebenza 25, XM18, 0562. Again, when it was really close to a Hinderer, I was super stoked about that knife when it first came out. The first what would you call it? The last two on my list are both sort of the first sort of semi-custom-ish knives that I got. And this was back when Jason Brous had recently come out with the Silent Soldier. And then right after that, he had the Division. There was a small division and a large division. And I wanted a division so bad I could hardly stand it. They were really expensive, and I was having a hard time, getting enough money put aside for it, and so I couldn't end up. And I never did own one. But what I did get was a Brous Blades T4. Remember when I don't know if he still does this, but he would only use D2 steel, and when he was asked about it, he would say, "Well, it's the only steel that I'm really confident heat treating." That that should have been a red flag, guys. Anyway. So I got a Brous Blades T4 and I loved that thing. Hey man, how's it going? Menace with a knife. Um, so the Brous Blades T4, I got that thing and again, same feeling. And that's what I'm sharing with you. The knives that invoke this similar, like just excitement and like a little kid, man. It was ridiculous. So Brous Blades T4 was fantastic, and the Silent Soldier Flipper, same thing. I loved it. And then, and I talked about this when I ran into Chris at Blade Show. Um, he was at the Wee Knives booth, I think, or at the Mastrop booth. I'm sorry. And I was like, dude, I've been a fan since the Ferox. And he was like, no way. And so one of the first, I guess the first mid-tech knife that I ever had was the Ferrum Forge Ferox. And I still love Ferrum Forge. There's just something about their designs that I find really, really appealing. It doesn't matter if I see a picture of any Ferrum Forge design knife. And let's bring out my current favorite. This, of course, is the Malice from Wii. But I don't care, guys. The there are so many Ferrum Forge designs that I just absolutely love, and uh, so yeah, they still, maybe it's because it was one of the first knives that I got, or the first knives of that caliber that I had owned, but for whatever reason, yeah, I just love the design aesthetic of the Ferrum Forge knives. They've got that mini Archbishop out there now. I recently saw Brian share it on his channel. I can't remember what video it was in, but great little knife. Too small for me. This is what I like to. This is where I am with the Ferrum Forge collection. But they're a company. Yeah, I would, if I just could buy all the knives I wanted and didn't have to worry about. 15 minutes away from the shop. That's terrible. If I was that close, they would be like kicking me out and calling security because I so often. Anyway, the Ferox was the last knife on this list, and there are a number of others, guys, over the years that I could talk about. When I first got an Nkosi, I was pretty stoked about that. A knife that stands out in my mind. I had a Gen 4 XM18 with Warrenclyffe blade. It was a fatty. I really, really liked that knife. Carried it a lot. Enjoyed the heck of it. That knife was very similar to a knife that Dr. Frunke had. This is my current XM18 with they call it a Skinner grind, although I don't know that it's the, I would say their slicer is probably better for skinning, but anyway, this is my current hinderer, and it's my favorite one I've ever had. I love this thing. I do need a more current version. I see the DLT exclusive that Brian's been showing off, and I need to get one of those. So there you go, guys. That's really about all I've got for you in terms of a discussion. Thanks a lot for joining me. And yeah, the exec is on my list. I sometime in the next little while, you'll see a Ferrum Forge exec at least go through the channel. I don't know if I'm going to love it as much as like this. I love because it's so substantial, and I'm afraid the exec won't do it for me to the same degree that this one does. But you know what? All we can do is wait and see, and I definitely will check one out. So I think that's about all I've got right now. I will say, guys, I'm on a bit of a fixed blade kick, and I've got a couple of good ones coming in. I've got an Niala that you should see first impressions coming up next week, and the Kaiser Harpoon is one that I. There you go. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, it's definitely on my short list of knives to check out. So big knife, just slim. There you go. So I should be happy with it. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for joining me. I think I need to wrap this thing up. I've got the sun is shining outside right now, but the rain is supposed to come back, so I'm feeling a little pressure to get out and take for a walk while I can. And of course, I'll be staying away from people. Hope that, oh, just in time to end. Sorry, man. Tony, I hope you're doing well, and I hope you are washing your hands and staying safe. Same to all of you. Wash your hands. Stay away from everybody. Just pretend like every single other person has the coronavirus, and you should be just fine. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Sorry, I've got to change my position so I can reach the phone to shut things off. Thanks a lot, guys. We will talk to you soon. Make a mask. There you go.